Israeli police were forced to release 4 people arrested from Ofakim city. These people were arrested during an ultra-Orthodox protest on February 7th. These rioters were set free in order to bring to an end a protest. The incident began when hundreds of ultra-Orthodox extremists surrounded a police station in Ofakim. Why? Because cops had arrested a yeshiva student who failed to report to draft orders and was declared a deserter. Then followed a riot, as cops, during attempts to disperse the protesters, used stun grenades. One officer was lightly injured by a thrown stone. Hundreds of ultra-Orthodox men rallied and blocked the entrance to the southern city to protest the arrest of a Haredi draft dodger. The draft dodger spent Shabbat at the home of his in-laws in the nearby Moshav Tifra after he got married 2 months ago. He was arrested after being stopped by traffic police. He had received a call-up order and ignored it. Ynet news site reports that the detainees, not including the draft evader, were released in exchange for the demonstrators dispersing. Remember, Israel's ultra-Orthodox are against the government's enforcement of compulsory military service. In June 2024, the Israeli Supreme Court ruled over exemption to ultra-Orthodox Jews. The Israeli SC had struck down exemptions long granted to ultra-Orthodox men. It had also barred state funding for religious seminaries whose students refused to enlist. Israel's ultra-Orthodox Jews have traditionally been largely exempt from military service. However, in recent months, the Israeli government has sent notices to them to join the military. Most ultra-Orthodox men use religious study to skip military service until reaching exemption age. Under a ruling established at the time of Israel's creation in 1948, men who devote themselves full-time to studying sacred Jewish texts are given a de facto pass from mandatory military service. The ultra-Orthodox make up 14% of Israel's Jewish population. On February 3rd, Israeli Defense Forces announced Tuesday that it approved new protocols regulating the service conditions for Haredi troops as the government works to advance legislation giving ultra-Orthodox men renewed exemptions from military service. Facing a manpower shortage, the IDF said in a statement that the General Staff Order is aimed at enabling more ultra-Orthodox men to join the military while maintaining their level of religiosity throughout their service. IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir has said that expanding Haredi enlistment is an essential operational necessity.
Jerusalem erupted in chaos as thousands of ultra-Orthodox Haredi Jews flooded the streets, protesting a proposed law that would force them into Israel's military. The demonstrations come as Israel's parliament debates legislation to conscript Haredi men into the Israel Defense Forces. The Knesset cited severe manpower shortages as the military fights on multiple fronts. However, what began as a protest turned deadly. A 14-year-old was killed and 3 others were injured after a bus ran over ultra-Orthodox demonstrators during the rally in Jerusalem. Reports claimed the deceased name was Yosef Eisenthal. Emergency crews responded to a severe collision involving a bus and several pedestrians. Reports quoting eyewitnesses claimed one male pedestrian was found trapped unconscious beneath the vehicle. Fire and rescue teams extracted him, but he was pronounced dead at the scene, while adding that 3 other pedestrians suffered minor traumatic injuries and were taken to hospital in stable condition. The bus driver was arrested at the scene. According to local reports, the driver claimed that protesters climbed onto the bus and that he tried to flee. Israeli police said officers were already deployed to contain what they described as violent riots. In a statement, police said a group of rioters blocked traffic, damaged buses, set trash bins on fire, threw objects and eggs at police and border police officers, shouted insults, and attacked journalists covering the protest. Police also said stones were thrown at officers and at journalists from Israel's public broadcaster, Kan News. Kan reported that its journalists were forced to flee into a nearby store and were later escorted to safety by border police. As violence escalated, police ordered the crowd to disperse and began using force to restore public order. Authorities say operations are continuing to stabilize the area. Some protest signs accused the Israeli government of discriminating against Sephardic Jews, with slogans labeling Israel an apartheid state.
And in the state of Israel, it behaves like the most anti-Semitic of countries, actually persecuting, taking in the middle of the night young men who want to sit and study Torah, which is really the only right to be here in the land of Israel, and comes and snatches them from their homes and puts them in prison, leading to all kinds of confrontations. It's truly a persecution of Torah scholars, both in the Knesset, in the government, and in the Supreme Court. All branches of government have declared the state, have essentially declared war on the Bible. And we have actually come here this evening to fight back, to declare that under no circumstances are we willing for any Haredi person to enlist in the army. It will not happen, it will never be. And that the whole issue of army conscription is a concept that will collapse because Haredim are never going to enlist in the army, ever. As it says here on the sign, the army is worse than death and therefore it is irrelevant, it is not relevant. For our faith, we are willing to give our lives, so even if the question is whether to die or to go to the army, we will choose death over the army.
They are not lacking soldiers, their goal is real and clear, they want to turn us into secular people, and that is the melting pot. That is why they brought the Yemenites from Yemen. That is why they persecuted the Jews from Morocco. That is why they have persecuted and continue to persecute to this very day, since the establishment of the state, anything connected to religion. And we will not allow this. We will fight for it. And once again, this is for the sake of heaven. Nothing will deter us there, not arrest, not violence, nothing else, not sanctions, no threats. No one will draft a single Haredi. We will remain strong, and we will see with God's help that we will bring satisfaction to the Holy One. Blessed be He.
The protest was organized by Rabbi Moshe Tzedakah of the Porat Yosef Yeshiva, a leading figure opposing the enlistment of Haredi Jews into the IDF, along with other ultra-Orthodox leaders. Earlier, police had stationed hundreds of Israel police and border police officers in the area to maintain security, protect residents, and manage traffic. The mass protest follows demonstrations held on Sunday when Haredi groups protested IDF Enlistment Day, which recruits ultra-Orthodox conscripts into combat units. Clashes were reported outside a Jerusalem recruitment office, while another illegal protest near the IDF recruitment office in Kiryat Ono blocked access to the Tel HaShomer military base. As tensions rise, Israel now faces growing unrest over mandatory conscription at a time when its military is already stretched across multiple fronts.